If you have a problem with mosquitoes in your backyard, let me show you an eco-friendly way to rid yourself of those bothersome bloodsuckers by utilizing a piece of cedar fencing like this one that I picked up for just a couple bucks. First, a little back history on my own mosquito hell and how I happily, but frankly quite accidentally, solved the problem. When my wife and I first bought our home and the 2 acres that it sits on, it was nothing but goat heads and gopher mounds. That's because it had no legal access to water, even though it had 350 feet of canal frontage. Well, after a moderate amount of effort wading through the bureaucracy of the local water district, we were able to secure water rights, and shortly thereafter, through the miracle of irrigation, turned 2 acres of dust into green turf and a couple of small vegetable gardens. Well, even though we were very careful not to allow any standing water on the property, with the new living landscape came a mass invasion of mosquitoes. To have any semblance of peace in the backyard, especially in the summer evenings, mandated lathering up with DEET-based insect repellent. The problem was so bad that reluctantly we even went to the extreme of spraying malathion on the property a number of times over the first couple years. Of course, neither of these toxic chemicals is desirable, and neither one really worked. We endured this annoyance for years, but also through those years we planted over 600 trees on the property, mostly Scotch pine, yellow pine, and Douglas fir. As those trees began to grow big, they needed to be thinned out, and in the thinning process, we left many of those as bare standing trunks. My wife installed decorative solar lamps on many of these trunks, while I attached homemade birdhouses to others. In addition to the birdhouses, we put out a number of bird feeders. It is worth noting that we also created a pond on the property, complete with a waterfall and stocked with koi. Shortly after its completion, we discovered multiple species of birds coming and drinking from the pond, as well as bathing in the waterfall. Well, lo and behold, one summer evening, it suddenly dawned on me that I hadn't been bitten by a mosquito on our property in years. It took me a while to make the correlation that the reason we no longer had a mosquito issue was that we had attracted a significant bird population to the property. Turns out that birds eating mosquitoes in mass is a well-known fact, but it is a fact that I didn't know, and maybe you didn't know it either. Sparrows, swallows, robins, and other birds can eat upwards of 2,000 mosquitoes a day. Heck, even hummingbirds will eat mosquitoes. Now, I'm not a bird expert, but I believe house wrens is what we primarily have living in our birdhouses. And when it comes to eating mosquitoes, house wrens are a major player. Supposedly, they can eat 10,000 mosquitoes in a day. Now do the math on that and you'll find that would require eating a mosquito every second for nearly 3 hours straight. Seems like an improbable undertaking, but regardless of whether that number is accurate, the bottom line is my once enormous mosquito problem has all but been eliminated ever since my feathered friends arrived. So it's not so much that I had a mosquito problem, but rather I had a bird shortage. There are basically 3 things you need to do to attract birds to your backyard. The first is to provide a water source. Now, you don't need a pond and waterfall. A basic bird bath should be sufficient. Secondly, provide a food source. Black sunflower seeds seems to be a favorite with many of the mosquito-eating birds. You might be wondering why provide a food source when you're trying to attract birds to eat mosquitoes. Well, the reason for this is that adolescent birds can't digest seeds just yet and are reliant upon mosquitoes and other insects for food. And besides, everyone, including birds, like a little variety in their diet. The next thing you want to do is provide birdhouses or nesting boxes. Be careful not to place them too close to the feeders, and certainly don't put food inside of the boxes, as this will attract predator birds as well as squirrels. Now, the squirrels won't necessarily harm the birds, but what they will do is knot at the entry hole, making it larger and more accessible to predator birds that will then in turn eat the eggs as well as the baby birds. So you've probably figured out that this piece of cedar that I referenced at the beginning of the video is meant to be turned into a birdhouse. Let me show you how easy it is to turn this piece of wood into a home that birds will love. Well, there it is, completed, and it took less than 30 minutes. Now all we got to do is go install it. And there it is, ready for some happy bird to make a home. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.